Hey everyone, Dashihan Miller here, and we're here with another Whiteboard Wednesday, and of course, it's Wednesday, right? So, and we're back on time for this one, right? So this is Wednesday, March 23rd of 2022, for those of you keeping track, and for those of you listening or watching in my future. Here's an example of breaking the bonds of time and space as we have in the ninjutsu Kuji levels, right? So anyway, one of the biggest, things that pop up from certain people who either see us demonstrating like some of these classical techniques, or anyone who looks at any like traditional martial art, right, that's focusing on kata, right? One of the number one naysayer, bullshit, whatever kind of things that pops up is, that wouldn't work, man. You can't do that stuff. Nobody fights like that. Whatever. Something along those lines. Okay. And not that they're not right. Okay. But as we've been talking about here over the course of a couple of weeks here, right, with these just from different perspectives, what we're looking at when we're looking at this kata-based approach, right, is there's this structure, right? There's this structure. I covered this in previous classes, but there's two basic ways that we can look at kata, right? There's a lot of different ways that we can train with kata, and I'm going to make that a subject for an upcoming Whiteboard Wednesday. But while there's a bunch of different ways that we could train with kata, that doesn't mean we're going to change them. It means that our mindset's going to be a little bit different, right? And again, if you're not listening to this in, I don't know, late 2022, 2023, 2028, after I'm dead, whatever, right? Our spring camp coming up this year, which is May 13th, 14th, and 15th, right? The theme for that camp is getting your head on straight, right? Not much different than what my grandfather meant when he said, boy, get your head on straight, right? But what we're going to be focusing on are these different psychological skills, right? Mental skills, and these different aspects that go on. I call them the invisible skills or the soft skills, because everybody wants to learn the moves, right? Everybody wants to hit hard. They want to be able to do this picture perfect kamae and all that kind of stuff. But is their head in the game? Do they even know how to get their head in the game, right? Or do they train in this sterile, dojo environment, and then, they're going to need Depends or whatever grown-up diaper kind of thing when the defecation hits the ventilation, as we might say in the politically correct world. But I'm not that way. So, when the shit hits the fan, right, are they going to be forgetting everything that they know? So anyway, all right. So what we looked at with this kata model and ways to two different ways to look at it, right? One way to look at a kata is as an expert role model, right? So here's hundreds, if not thousands of years behind this thing, right? This model that was put together by master warriors, right? People that had survived battle after battle or attack after attack, depending on whether it was a back alley or a battlefield, right? And so this is the way they think. This is the way they make decisions. This is the way they control the bubble, the situation, whatever. So the premise is, if I want to be a master, if I want to be an expert, do it like this, right? Here's an example, right? Another way to look at kata is as a bad habit breaker, right? So again, kata's lasted for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And especially in our art, not as some sacrosanct kind of thing, like you can't change it, you can't do whatever, right? What I mean is it's not this museum piece, like it always has to be done the same way or it's wrong, right? Someday I'll tell you a story about a testing I went to with one of my friends who's in a different martial art. And let's just say he made a little tweak to a kata because something changed and he failed the entire test, right? So anyway, right? So it's a bad habit breaker, right? Remember, this thing has lasted again and again and again. How many different people have used it on a battlefield, back alley, whatever, right? Or something really, really similar, the model holds up, right? So if we're having a problem doing the kata, it's not the kata, it's us. There's something that we're screwing up, right? So again, it's a model, right? It's an initiation to a collection of techniques or principles or concepts or whatever, right? It's an example of a particular lineage's way of doing things, right? against an incoming fight, right? The cool thing about the Bujinkan is that we have 9 different perspectives, and that's just what Hatsumi Sensei has soke ship of. I know there's other sokes these days, but right, they all came together under him, and he split them up again, right? Or actually, they all came together under Takamatsu Sensei, passed on Hatsumi Sensei has broken them up again. You might want to think about why he did that. But anyway, right? So here are these at least 9 different perspectives, right? Because there's lots of other lineages that are within this. We just don't focus on them because everybody likes to dance around and parade the 9 that he has soke ship of, right? So they're gonna ignore the Ito Ryu, the Musashi Ryu, and a whole butt ton of other things that are influences to these other Ryuha, and they got absorbed over time and whatever, right? So and it's not that you have to jump on these things, right? Anyway, but there are 9 different perspectives to resolving combat, to resolving a bad situation, right? So when we get a technique, when we get a kata, we get one of these examples, it's an initiation to a certain way of looking at things, strategy, tactical application of techniques and the different skill sets. And then, we need to take it from there, right? We need to be asking important questions like why this particular thing here, right? Why this particular angle, those kind of things, right? Now, in the beginning, if you look at that Shuhari model, I think I already did a whiteboard Wednesday on this, I think, right? And if not, there's one coming up. Anyway, but there's this old traditional model for passing things on, right? Shuhari, right? These are 3 levels of training. Shu, not the same shu as in pei, like for hand, right? Shu, this means to copy or preserve, right? So teacher shows, you do. No henka, no varying, no, that's my own little spin on things. Well, I know it's that way, but this is the way I do it. Okay? This way. You're not allowed to vary anything or whatever until you can actually do the damn model, right? And then ha, in this case, doesn't mean mouth, it doesn't mean horse, whatever, right? Okay? Lots of different things sound the same, but kanji is different and all that, right? So ha here means to break, right? So this is where henka and the kyonapo principle of variation comes in and all that, right? And the ri means to transcend it, right? So everybody wants to jump here because they want to be that, that master teacher. They want to be soke. They want to be whatever. And it's okay to want to be those things. It absolutely is. That's a huge part of affirmations and visualization and becoming one of the 1 to 5% of the entire population that lives at any given time who is super, super successful. But that doesn't mean that you want it in a way where you just shortcut the whole process and you don't go through the same thing that the people that are there are able to do, right? So most people, that's too much work, right? So what they end up doing is resenting those people, hating them, right? Downplaying them, all that kind of crap, right? So anyway, there's this whole process, right? So anyway, one of my things has always been, and something I think I'm pretty decent at, is taking these ancient Japanese concepts, right? And all these lessons I've had with these different teachers and whatnot, and synthesizing them in a way so that I can communicate them much better to a Western audience, right? And that's really what happens, right? So that you don't have to spin your wheels and try to do the same, the years and decades and whatnot of trying to understand Japanese culture beyond the superficial level that most people stop at or whatever, right? Okay. So one of those things that I have, and we've been talking about sparring the last 2 weeks. So if you didn't see those videos, you can always go back and look at those, right? But that's one way to make your techniques street ready, as long as it's done in a certain way where you're not coming up with something that looks completely different from everything else that you're learning when you're trying to do it, right? And again, watch those videos. I explain it much better. I'm not going to take the extra time, right? What I'm going to focus on during this lesson is the kata, right? How do I get the kata, the thing that most people look at and go, dude, nobody fucking fights like that anymore, right? Nobody does that, right? That's not the way things happen. That would never work on the street. Taking that thing and getting it as absolutely close, right, to street ready, or it'll adjust a little bit, right? But it doesn't turn into something else, right? But making it something that will work in 21st century UK, Australia, US, Canada, wherever you happen to be living in the world, Macau. I've got people in Turks and Caicos, all kinds of stuff, right? All over the place, right? So how do I do that, right? So what I want to look at is this thing that I developed that I call the 0 point method, 0 point formula outline, whatever you want to call it, right? But 0 point, right? And see, I made a 0, right? I already pre-drew this out because I didn't want to make a whole bunch of sloppy lines and all that. And so here's the thing. I actually have a worksheet that I give students at certain seminars, or we're going to be getting this thing up online where people can actually, like, pop in your email address and you'll get sent that and a whole bunch of other lessons and cool stuff like that, right? So, I mean, you could always just do this, right? I mean, you don't need me and my computer skills to make up a worksheet for you to do this, right? Now, the other lessons that go behind it, maybe. And if you want that, then you can always, reach out. But anyway, right? So what I'm looking at with this is a way to take something that is subjective, right, and make it more objective so that you can measure it, you can monitor it, you can make sure that you're not missing something that's really, really, really important. Like, if you don't have it and you need it, you die, right? We're not buying a used car. We're not buying or picking up a refrigerator we saw sitting along somebody's, the front of their property and stuff with a free sign on it or whatever, right? We're not buying a brand new, living room furniture set or whatever, where if it turns out to be wrong, we can take it back and bitch and complain, right? What we're playing with here, and I hope everybody gets this, right? Especially the instructors, because I think most of them are missing it, right? Any student that comes to me for training, right, is literally putting their life in my hands until they can do this for themselves. And it's something I need to take very seriously. And you need to take very seriously, because if you did, you'd stop listening to half the bullshit that's being passed out by 90% of the people that are doing it. Just a thought. Anyway, all right. So what the 0 point method is, or the 0 point framework is a way to take a look at any given technique from two different perspectives. All right. So that we can, again, it's all about getting to street ready, right? So the red line here, right where the 0 is, okay, that's where we're going to write in any given technique. And since most of the folks that watch this are within ninjutsu and the ninjutsu realm and I don't know, Bujinkan, but even if you're not, even if you're from outside this martial art, that's okay. Any kata, right? It goes right here, right? So I'm gonna use one that most people know, right? So Ichi, Manji, no kata, right? It's one of the first ones everybody should be learning. Okay, it's part of the Kyonapo, right? Ichi Monji no kata, right? An example of using Ichi Monji no kama, right? So that goes right here. Okay, that doesn't make it a 0, right? Also, before we get too far ahead, right? I know you see +5, +10, -5, -10. That doesn't mean that these things down here are negatives. That doesn't mean that these things up here are all the good stuff, right? I'll explain this in a minute, but all of this stuff is necessary, okay? So the way the 0 point framework works is I have this model, right? I'm supposed to be copying it. I'm supposed to be learning it so I can then move on to extrapolate the lessons from it and move it farther and farther down the line to where Ichi Monji no kata or some variation of it comes out on the street and not ninjutsu-ish, not taijutsu-ish kind of thing, right? So Ichi Monji no kata, right? So for those who don't know it, and again, you can't see my feet and all that kind of stuff, but an attack comes in, I'm shifting back, doing this counter strike, and there's lots of ways to come in to control their attention and all that. But from the Gyokuri perspective, this way, in, and I shift and deliver a palm-up knife hand, again, staying in Ichi Monji no kata, or kamae the whole time, right? And then I'm shifting away, right? And if I do it full on, right, I should be striking a point back here because one of the primary principles in the Gyoko school is to circle behind the attacker. That doesn't mean you need to physically run all the way around them, right? But I can come around and catch right back here, and I'm actually striking into Jumonji no kamae as I shift, right? So I'm forward on them here, shift, and then end up this way, right? So I'm actually in an Ichi Monji no kamae facing where they just face planted, okay? So there's this model, right? It's the initiation. So the way the system works, and again, you can put anything on these lines as long as it's in the ballpark, as long as it fits what we're talking about. So Everything below the 0 line is everything that we need to work on and get right to produce the kata correctly. Most people see this as the kihon. It is a kihon, right? Ichimonji no kata shows up how many different ways, right? Even in the kyonapo, right? One of the variations of Ichimonji no kata is called ganseki nage, right? Throwing a big rock, okay? Instead of swat coming in this way, right? Breaking, shift, and look at that. Anyway, all right. So, but what we have below that are what is known as the kihon no kihon, the fundamentals of the fundamentals, right? I'm just going to arbitrarily write some things on here. They're not arbitrarily. What I mean is no one thing belongs on any given line, right? Just make sure that you're getting them, right? So on here, obviously, is the kamae, right? Being able to do ichimonji no kamae if I'm doing yoko-ryu style. If I'm doing koto-ryu style, I might be doing more of a doko-ish kind of thing. If I'm doing, or I might be doing seigan, I might be doing bomi no kamae, whatever, right? Okay. So it's the kamae. Whatever kamae or kamae, right? Because Japanese, the same word is singular and plural, right? So lots of people like to say kamaes, right? Because they just Englishified their Japanese, which is fine. Anyway, so kamae, right? One or more that are involved in that thing, right? Okay. I have another worksheet for my students that actually has 10 aspects that they're required to know about every single kamae that they know. Okay. So there's 10 just there for that one, right? Kamae, footwork, right? Index. I guess the index points are part of the kamae. Let's see. Balance. I'm just throwing some things out here. Uke nagash, most people call blocking. We already did a Whiteboard Wednesday on that bullshit translation. Anyway, uke nagash, whatever, right? There's a whole bunch of things in here, right? Your strikes, right? Your striking action, which is different from your fist, right? Fist, form, yeah, that kind of thing, right? What else? Your tai-hen, right? Right, your tai-hen, your overall body movement. So whatever, right? I'm just throwing some things on here to give everybody kind of an idea of where things are going. And I know it's a mismatch. So if you're on your cell phone, you should be able to like think and swell it up. And if not, I don't know, get on a laptop and go to YouTube and blow up the picture. I don't mean like blow it up, but you know what I mean. Anyway, right? So, so these are all the things that I need to work on to get right so I can do this thing correctly 10 out of 10 times. Okay. Now, I'm going to take a little departure here before we go into the top part right here, because I've been talking about this with my students for a while, and there's a constant reminder to everyone, right? Because, again, there's this point where people tend to stop, right? Because ego is satisfied, right? So they tend to stop, and then they rest on their laurels, and they're not really where they're supposed to be. They're where they think they should be, or they're where they want to be, right? Like the guy who just wants to show off with his friends and be satisfied that he's learned something, right? He's going to stop at a certain point where I can do it. And like, you know, everybody's like, ooh, that was really cool, right? Except you're going to get your teeth knocked down your throat. And then, ooh, that'll be really cool to a whole other different group of people, right? So, when it comes to practice, right? Again, I'll circle back to here and then we'll go in the other direction, right? When it comes to practice, the vast majority of students stop practicing a technique or a skill set when they're able to duplicate the introductory model that their teacher gave them. Hell shit, some people stop. They can't do this consistently. They keep coming up with henka, okay? That's their crutch or their bullshit little freaking excuse for bad taijutsu or bad strategy or bad tactical application or bad angling, striking action, uke nagash, whatever it is, right? Okay. So they never get to doing this like they really should. And I know that for a fact because in Ishizuka Sensei's dojo in Japan, right? The one where Kasem and everybody's trying to follow his videos and all that kind of stuff, right? Okay. I love training with Kasem. I love training with Ishizuka Sensei. I hear no more often to my own stuff in that dojo, right, than anybody would ever want to hear ever. Why do I keep going back? because I'm serious about fixing stuff. Okay? I don't need to be patted on the head and be told that I'm the prodigy who understands everything. Why the hell would I be spending $3,000 to $4,000 per trip to Japan to be told that I'm right? Why bother going if I'm right? Right? I go so the people that are as far ahead of me as most of my students think I'm ahead of them, so they can look at my stuff and go, that needs to be fixed, and I fill up notebooks. Okay? And that's the point. But most people stop when they get it right. And they don't have to get it right very often for them to go, awesome, right? One of the jokes in our dojo is somebody will be having a problem with the technique and struggling and all that, and all of a sudden they'll get it right? And the student will go, success! I can go home now. I got it right? And that's our joke, right? Because that's what most people do, right? Then they stop right there, okay? That's like the guy who hasn't trained in the martial arts for 13 freaking years or whatever, right? And he finds out that you're in the martial arts and whatnot. He goes, oh, yeah, I don't need that. I already have a black belt. Oh, can you, how much of it do you remember? Oh, well, not really very much, but I have a black belt. Yeah, well, I have a freaking Pee-wee baseball trophy that I earned when I was 9, too. But you know what? I haven't played baseball since then. So it's a nice little memorabilia piece, but what can you do with it? Show it off to your friends. Everybody's impressed because you earned a black belt. But are you of that skill set, right? So most people stop when they get it right? First stage for a lot of my students that are really, really serious, I tell them, you can't stop when you get it right? You have to train until you can't get it wrong. Okay? But that's not the end point either. I just introduced this to my Shinobi Kai people the other night, right? And this goes along with something that Hatsumi Sensei has always been saying, that again, just like a lot of stuff that he has been misunderstood, retranslated, and then it becomes something that it never was, right? What he always said was, you have to get to a point where you forget technique, right? Just forget it, right? You throw it away, right? So what people have taken that to mean is, you don't need technique. Technique is bullshit, whatever, right? He says throw it away. Yeah, what most people miss is the context that he was teaching in a class that had 10th to 15th dans in it. He wasn't taught, and he even starts these classes off saying, what I'm about to teach today is for the 10th to 15th dans, or most later years, right? For the Dai Shihan. If you're not at this level, you need to find a Shidoshi or a Shihan or whatever that can teach you the stuff so you can understand what I'm presenting. Okay? The YouTube surfers, people go to Japan and, whatever, right? So here's the question, right? If I'm supposed to throw away technique, if I'm supposed to throw away kata, if I'm supposed to forget them, question number 1, how in the hell can I forget something that I never knew? How can I throw away something I never had? Okay? It's not about that, right? It's about that when I get to a certain point in my training, I varied things, right? Getting this thing wrong is going to be an anomaly as opposed to, gee, I hope I get this right? Works sometimes, doesn't work others, and whatever. So, I got Henka, right? I can always vary it because, that's not what was happening. No, you weren't happening is what was happening, right? But that's where this transcending kind of thing comes in, right? So I'm transcending the form because I get it, right? The timing, the distancing, the angling, the kotsu, the essential nature of the technique, the ritsudo, right? The breath or the breath of the fight, the rhythm, the timing, that kind of stuff, right? I can feel that, right? I don't have to think about it, right? It's there, right? So we go from not stopping when we get it right to keep training till you can't get it wrong, but we're going to transcend that too, okay? And we're going to transcend this until, let's see, I can act without thinking. I don't even have to think about what has to be done. It just comes out. For those of you who drive, right? Think about the last time that you were driving and somebody almost didn't stop at a stop sign or a traffic light or something like that, right? Or pulled some jackwagon move, right? And next thing you know, right, you realize, right, you go through this little moment, right, except that your body has already executed a couple of dozen, if not over 100 micro muscle moves to move the steering wheel, to move your foot from the accelerator to the pedal, to apply pressure, to you got all kinds of wherewithal left over where you can yell at them and maybe even communicate with one or two fingers, right? So, but you didn't have to think about that, right? That was all happening while your left brain took a quick vacation and it couldn't think. In that moment, you couldn't remember your name, you couldn't remember your address, you couldn't remember any of those little details. And yet all of this stuff just poured out the way it needed to happen, right? You weren't like brand new driver teenager, right? Your hands jerk the wheel and then next thing you know, you're in a tree, right? You hit the brakes so freaking hard that your head goes through the windshield or your chest goes into the steering column, whatever, right? It was just enough, right? Make that little adjustment. You're right back on path, right? And you had enough mental wherewithal to be able to be yelling at them or, you know, whatever, right? So these are different phases. Right. The problem is that ego gets satisfied at certain levels and then they're not really where they need to be. And that's what happens here. Everybody gets through this stuff and they can do this thing more often than not. 8 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 times, 12 out of 10 times, whatever. Right. Because there's always the overachievers. I can do that shit 15 out of 10 times. Right? So anyway, right. You got to love them. Right. So anyway, but this is where they stop. Right. They stop when they got it right. And then they start making assumptions. One of those assumptions is somebody punch me, man. What the freaking Ichi no Kata, right? Okay. Now, can they do what I just did without looking like they're all flippy around and their balance goes off and you know hair goes whatever, right? Okay. I keep my hair from flying and I need a haircut. Anyway, so Ichi no Kata, right? So we got this. We got the 0 point, not the end of the path, okay? Because everything above this is all the stuff that we need to work on. Today, we're going to call street ready. Street ready. That means that the attacker can go at their speed, their style, their whatever, and all conditions being right. I'll get to that in a minute. All conditions being right, I'm going to whip an Ichi no Kata on his ass and be successful with it. Okay? So what are these things? Because people just figure if they just train this a whole lot, do a whole bunch of henka, whatever, right? Different variations and stuff, right? Because, the henka, okay? So I'll give you that, right? I'm going to put henka up here, okay? Because that belongs to this. We start breaking it, right? Start breaking it. By what I mean by breaking it is I start replacing, let's say, an omote shito with an ura shito, right? I trade that out for an elbow. I trade that out for some kind of a kick or whatever, right? We take it through the Kyonapo process, right? Not the Kyonapan, 8 things, right? The process, right? That Takuma Sensei was heavy on when he was teaching Hatsumi Sensei, right? So henka, yeah, we do want to start varying it, but henka here is about what I'm doing. I'm adjusting, right? And for a lot of people, again, this becomes some kind of bullshit kind of thing because what they're doing is making up things along the way. They've either pre-thought different things. Now it's not a henka, right? I mean, you pre-thought it, right? Henka is a variation. And the big thing with henka, Hatsumi Sensei, I remember being in Japan one time, a bunch of times, but this one time he made it a point, and Hatsumi Sensei has always normally been like the happy-go-lucky kind of guy, right? Oh, that's good, whatever works, right? Whatever, right? Every once in a while, he'll stop and lock on and make a very, very important point, right? And he made this point about henka one time, right? And he was talking about, the first move or two in a kata are the most critical pieces. If you get them right, it doesn't matter what you do after that, okay? But he was also talking about how that's not henka, right? That's not variation, right? it means you've done the important things, and then it doesn't matter what you do after that, right? It doesn't matter if you do taijutsu, taekwondo, whatever, right? It doesn't matter, right? Because you have them, right? And you're not in danger anymore, right? Most people don't do that. They're still walking through the step-by-step stuff because it's more important to look good than it is to be good, right? And then they get online and argue bullshit back and forth, and some of us are standing back going, you're all assholes. Anyway, right? So I know that just made a whole bunch of people click off, didn't it? That's cool, right? Satsumi Sensei said one time after a big calamity in Japan, looks like that washed all the shit away. Anyway, so nobody wants to hear that stuff either, especially the people that think they're all that in a bag of fucking microwave popcorn. Anyway, right? So, but this is about things that I can do to change things up based on little things where he's in a different place or whatever, okay? So that's important. It really is important, right? But to make sure that things are street ready, there's a whole bunch of other things I have to train against, right? I have to understand how an Ichimonji no Kata can be used against different punches or grabs or kicks, right? Okay. Because everybody's learning based on this classical tsuki, right? Quick story. I promise, quick. I have this book that I wrote a long time ago, right? It's called The Karate Myth, right? And the premise is on reminding people not to confuse the fact that somebody has one of these, can you see that? One of these around their waist with the fact that they can teach you how to save your life. Okay, this means the same thing that a university degree means. I have studied and passed the requisite testing on a block of material, and the organization is certifying that, yes, I'm proficient with that. Okay, there is no guarantee to a university graduate of any kind of degree that comes from the college or the university that that person will get a job in that field, and it's no guarantee to the employer that that person will be freaking good at their job. It's too many other variables. Okay. Just because I learned Ichimonji no Kata, Seion, Kyogi, Gyoko style, Koto style, whatever, that has no bearing, or maybe 15% bearing on whether or not I can protect myself against a bad guy on the street. Right? Unless that's mixed with some kind of experience. In the dojo, we tend to use drills that simulate some of those variables, right? Some of us, fortunately or unfortunately, have been in really bad situations where we've used what we've learned, not something else, what we've learned against bad guys. So anyway, right? But different punches and grabs and kicks and things like that, right? So how do I do an Ichimonji no Kata against a Taekwondo roundhouse kick? How do I do it against a right cross or a haymaker? How do I do it against an uppercut? How do I do it against whatever, right? How do I do it? Because one of these things on here, right, that I'm learning in here is, where is it? Do I have it on here? Oh, let's add one. Naname. Naname is angling. A lot of people group this into Tai Sabaki, right? Tai Sabaki is a whole bunch of things, Naname being one of them, right? So proper angling, right? What's the proper angle against a hooking attack as opposed to a straight on ski? Okay, so these, but I have to work with it. I have to work again. I have to practice, and often what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go right back to kamae and footwork and basic evasion, right? And basic evasion, right? We worked on that, right? Evasion. That's 45 degrees, sensei. No, it isn't. It's not 45. It's not 30. We give you that as an expedient in the beginning, right? It is angled to the line of the attack, profiled to the attacker. And if you're not profiled, you're still out of range and all his targets are open, but none of yours are accessible, even if they're right in front of him. Okay? Naname, right? Most people have not mastered Naname, let alone most of the other stuff, right? They have guesses, okay? So, but what's the Naname? What's the proper angle against a given attack. I already gave you the answer, right? We're angled to the line of the attack, which means we can't move just because he farted, right? We have to move at the right time to gather that information. We're ninja, for God's sake. We're information gatherers. You wouldn't know that, but anyway. Okay? So I know I'm hard on a lot of people, but you know what? I'm here to help the 2 to 5% that actually want to do good stuff, because everybody else is going to find whoever's going to let them get away with the most bullshit and get whatever they need to get the easiest. That's just the way human nature is. And that doesn't make me a pessimist. Okay? I'm a Buddhist, for God's sake. That makes me a realist. Okay? I'm a Buddhist, for God's sake. Did you pick up on that? Anyway, all right. So I make me laugh. Anyway, all right. So different punches and grabs, right? How about assessment skills? I have not made up an assessment worksheet, but I probably should, because I keep harping on that stuff, right? There are a butt ton of things to assess. Everything from my emotional state, which is another translation for kamai, right? Being aware of my condition, right? The environment, the ground surface, his movement, and what looks like his fighting style, if I'm giving him more space and all that and paying attention, right? The feel and intensity that I'm picking up from him, right? Clothing he's wearing, clothing I'm wearing, all that kind of stuff, right? There's all this. The question here is this even the right technique or potentially an option for this given situation, right? Part of learning one of these things is knowing when it works and when it doesn't. And the problem for most people when they're training is they get so involved in this, right? It's so dogmatic, right? It's so blind faith that they would never, ever, ever consider trying to make their art fail. And some of us did that. I took a good year to do it. Went around and trained with other people and whatnot, okay? I found when certain techniques failed under given conditions, right? So note to self, not an option in those kind of situations, okay? Or I need this, and this variable for that to be even in the ballpark, right? But assessment skills. Let's see, what else? Different, all these things, right? Different types of uke nagash, right? So what balance breaking method? What uke nagash? What, I'm going to use the term blocking just because everybody else does, right? Blocking, receiving, absorbing. I did a whole freaking class on this. Okay. What method for this type of attack, for this type of attacker? Maybe it's a similar attack, similar punch type, but he's like 2.5 times my size, or he's shorter, or he's tall and thin. Okay. I just covered this with somebody last night for pressure points, right? Somebody was having a hard time applying a pressure point to lock somebody down. And they were working with somebody who's really, really skinny, very, really nimble, right? And I walked over and I said, so here's the thing with pressure points, right? You can know where the points are, okay? Pressure points are actually harder to find and catch on a bigger person, right? Because they've got more mass, but the point is in a very specific place, right? It's harder to get, but once you get it, you've got them, okay? Because bigger folks tend to not be as flexible and nimble, right? Smaller people, skinnier people, it's really easy to find the point. But because they're freaking nimble, right, they can slip out of that and it's harder to keep. That's a whole different skill set, right? Okay. But people tend to only gravitate toward training partners that their stuff works well on. They tend to gravitate away from the ones that it doesn't work on because, well, you know, he's messing my stuff up. He's not messing your stuff up. I screamed at training partners the other day, or not training partners, students in class, right? Because they were trying to play this. They wouldn't say it out loud, but I could see it, right? And I just yelled. The attacker is never wrong. And I don't mean morally or ethically for attacking you. I mean, they're going to do whatever they do. They're right. It's your job to adapt, not their job. You need to kick their ass. They're not punching you so you can kick their ass. They're punching you so they can kick yours. And remember, well, maybe not remember, never, ever, ever forget that no one in this world is going to let you do your cool moves to them except for your freaking training partner. So don't be gloating in class just because you got it right against Joe Billy Bob. Joe Billy Bob's your friend, and he's not going to really be trying to hurt you, and you don't want to, break or kill Joe Billy Bob. So I'm just picking a name, right? Could be Francois. Pick whatever fits you, right? So anyway, there's all this stuff, right? Timing work and all that, right? But assessment skills, blocking, receiving, being able to navigate and do things in different clothing types. I know I skipped one, right? Clothing types, right? What kind of clothing styles and types inhibit my movement? Is this something that I can even do in that? Starting with your shoes, right? People like to work around certain things when they come to class because it allows them to do things better in class. Great. If you thought about what you wear on an everyday basis, I know the styles have changed and people have gotten more slovenly and lackadaisical. We call this style these days. I'm old school. I get it. I'm an old guy who doesn't know how the world works anymore, and that's fine, right? I'm still going to dress up to go to a business meeting because that makes the right impression, regardless of whether or not that person is in a T-shirt and jeans and they're a multimillionaire either, right? As soon as I walk in the door, that's going to click certain pathways up here because that speaks to certain things. He's not going to have to look at another guy in jeans, T-shirts, and Keds or whatever and make the assumption that maybe we're on the same level, right? Okay. So clothing types, all kinds of things, right? All kinds of things, right? Sensing intention, right? And playing with drills that have to do with feeling when they're going to go, right? Because thinking about attacking is attacking, okay? Somebody thinks about trying to move in and all that, but the moment they decide to go, their brain sends a signal to the muscles, right? If you can pick up on that, you can meet them while they're still in prep stage. This is a part of the that Gogyo 5 elements, right? Fire, I'm not going to draw them out, but fire, earth, metal, I guess I am. Water, wood, whatever, right? So there's this productive cycle. There's also the destructive cycle, right? So we use this in the black belt levels as a strategic way of controlling things because we want to jam things up before it gets to the next thing. Or if we can't jam it up, we know where it's going, so we know what we need next, right? Again, it's not just this theoretical, I can recite it. Who gives a shit? Lots of people in my country can recite the Pledge of Allegiance too, or they can sing the national anthem. Not an ounce of freaking patriotism in their entire body, okay? Who cares, right? They do it because it sounds good to everybody else, or they do it because that's what they're supposed to do, or whatever, okay? Same thing that people do this stuff with, right? It's our style. It's just not a style. So anyway, right? So there's all this stuff, right? And there's a whole bunch more that we could be adding in here. And sometimes with the thing that I'm working on or at the level that you're at or whatever, maybe you can only find 5. Work on those, right? Same thing above. Maybe you can find 15. Maybe you can, go beyond this that I have laid out or whatever. The point is you work on as much as you can that will give you every possible edge out there. Because I need to take Ichi Manji. I think, well, you'll see this for our Friday virtual class because we're going to work on 1, maybe 2 of these aspects. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of training drills to work off of a basic model or 2, right? But when the little blurb comes out, it's not a meme, but you know what I mean, the picture that lets you know about the Friday class or whatever. Best thing I came up with was all of this, right? Is to go from kata to kick-ass without assumptions. Okay? And that has to be tested. So sparring is a part of that, or randori, whatever you want to call it, right? Waza training is a part of that. Henka is a part of that. All these kind of things, right? It's not one or the other, right? So again, I just threw a couple on here just to kind of, what about my teacher said this was important to be able to do that right? Well, then put it on a damn line. Okay. So same thing, right? I was told that, you got to, missed a big one up here that definitely needs to be on here, right? Environment. Can you do Ichi Monji no Kata or whatever, blank, 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 no Kata, right? not just in a big old open sterile area, right? I don't care if it's the park, right? Down a big old plot. Most people go to the park and they find a big old plot that has nice even ground and plushy grass because you might have to fall on it, right? Nobody's looking for lumpy stuff. Nobody's training in a gravel driveway or a gravel parking lot. How many people go out in the wintertime and train on ice or in slush or in mud? Whatever, right? Training between parked cars. We did a seminar a bunch of years ago with one of my teachers and brought him in. And the theme, which really drew a whole bunch of people in, right? The theme was surviving impossible situations. See his big old smile. I knew where it was going, right? But people showed up and the look of disappointment. Now, they still learned a lot out of the seminar, but the first thing my teacher said was, if you're here to learn how to survive an impossible situation, let me just show you that marketing works, because an impossible situation is impossible by its very nature. What we're going to train for this weekend is to survive situations that most people would assume are impossible. And so we did very little training in an open dojo, right? We had some people that volunteered, some second cars and some beaters and all that kind of stuff that they were okay with getting, bumped into or scratched or whatever, right? And we loaded up the parking lot with those. And we did techniques where people were training in between parked cars, very little space and all that. How do you do Ichi no Kata in there? And at different places too, right? Because we could be, let's say, car. You guys know how things are parked. I mean, if you're in Europe or Japan, right? Car, whatever. If you're in BC or in some areas in the States, right? Big old pickup truck, whatever, right? So you got these things, right? So it's not just between parked cars. Where between parked cars, right? Are you defending in here? Are you defending at this little plus sign kind of area right here, right? Okay. Are you here? Where, right? So when you move angles, what's open and what's available to you, that kind of stuff, right? Are you between two parked cars because you just opened your door and you just got out and they're coming at you this way, right? All this stuff's important, okay? It's all important, okay? What about in a doorway? What about at the top or bottom of a staircase? Okay, I just showed somebody was it last night or I don't know, a recent class with these stair stepper kind of things that they use in aerobics classes for step classes. What do you use it for step classes? We use it so people can practice stepping back into Ichi Manji, make sure their balance and their movement's right. So when their foot bounces off this thing, they can pick it up, right? Let me shift things here a little bit. I'm going to give you a little extra little lesson here. Earthquake, okay? So let me borrow this. Now I'm going to use this. I'm going to have to go slowly because I don't have anything right behind it to jam it up. But with a stairwell, you would have that, or a curb on the street, right? And I back up and bump on this because most people tend to move and then move their foot instead of carrying things, right? Because if I carry and I bump that, I can pick my foot up. My body is still upright even though my feet are on different levels. Or I'm on I'm in a certain place, right? And I have to move, and I realize I just stepped off a curb or a staircase, so I dropped into a position. My body's still upright. My torso's still upright in Shizen. You fix my camera again, right? Come on, still upright in Shizen, even though my feet are on different planes. Okay? That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about here, okay? Because we never know where it's going to happen. We don't know how many of them, right? We don't know, okay? So I know it looks like a lot, but it is a lot, right? We never said that this was easy. We said it was worth it. Our job is to make the training, not the training easy, to make the process for you easier and quicker than it was for us or whatever. So we come up with what on the mandala is called skillful means, right? Here's some little things that'll make this easier to understand, easier to do, whatever, right? Instead of just these vague little one-liners at that best, right, on a densho, right? So this is where we are, right? The whole idea is 0 point is whatever the technique is that you're working on. You're trying to learn at this level, right? But there's a whole bunch of things. that make this what it is. Remember, if you watch the video on Kata Waza, right? Kata are built of waza. Waza are these little actions. Shifting back into Ichi Manji, that's a waza, right? Delivering ski, that's a waza, right? But a kata is built of waza. Okay, it's a string of waza, right? So here are all your waza, right? Or the things that you need to get so that you can duplicate this 8, 9, 10 times out of 10, right? Then now, right? So this is in my dojo. Not that somebody needs to know Ichi Manji no Kata for black belt. I mean, obviously they do, right? But for Shodan, the show in Shodan, that kanji means beginner or head of class. Doesn't mean head of class. It means, okay, now your toolbox for art or toolbox for mechanics class or whatever is now full. You've learned all the tools. Now it's time to start learning something. Okay. So this process right here is where 90%, 95%, right? Or they peck at it, right? Because it's easier to feel like we got it, right? Or just assume, right? I got it right. So it's automatically self-defense ready, right? So again, going back to all this formula, again, is just another way to approach this whole idea of expertise, proficiency, mastery, whatever word you want to use, right? But again, this is the process for going past getting it right to the point where at least I can't get it wrong, right? But I need to get past that, because when it's a surprise attack and my brain takes a vacation and I need to be able to move in that little microsecond or whatever time perceptual gap, right? So the left brain comes back in, right? That's another part of training. Part of training is to get that gap as small as possible. It'll never go away, but it's to get it as small as possible. Okay. We don't want to be that the security guard that got run over by the Zamboni in the one Austin Powers movie, right? Where like 20 minutes later, he finally gets run over and crushed, right? Okay. But for some people, right, they're great in the dojo, but as soon as they get spooked, right, everything locks up. Okay. So we don't train till we get it right. Okay. This is at least a decent place to be. Train until you can't get it wrong. But what we're really talking about is training until that comes out or parts of that come out in context with what's going on as a correct option without having to think about it. Okay. Anyway, that's what I got. There's that little URL down there, right? Our Friday virtual training is coming up this Friday. Whiteboard Wednesday, virtual Friday. Anyway, right? We have a master's class that happens at 6 p.m. on Fridays here at the dojo. That's Eastern time. And that's when we do a deep dive on what I'm covering during the Whiteboard Wednesday kind of things. So I got some regulars now that are coming in other than my own long distance training guys, Jeff from the West Coast and Jason from the Midwest, and a bunch of these people that are coming in and jumping on these things. Classes are $4.99, right? I mean, anyway, so it's just, I'm not looking to make a ton of money on this stuff, just to kind of take the edge off of all these services that I pay for so everybody gets free stuff, right? So, but we're going to be working on this Friday. Specifically, we're going to be looking at angles, but knowing me, I'm going to throw some other things in that belong in this area. We're going to pick a form or two, depending on what we can fit in 60 to 90 minutes, right? Getting people to move through things, right? Because again, it's another introduction to training areas, and it's up to people to go and do their thing, right? To kind of play around with can we do this from these different perspectives? So it's a much deeper dive. This is the 30,000 foot, hot air balloon looking at the scenery and going, that looks cool, right? And it's certainly a full thing. You can take this and run with it, work with your own training and all that. But if you want to see examples of it and you want to get your questions answered and all that kind of stuff, you do it for less than $5 on Friday. Just go to that URL that's right there. It's already set up. Just click on a link, take care of it. We'll make sure you get all the information. We do it through Zoom, so you'll need the Zoom app for that. But otherwise, that's it, right? If you have any other questions or whatever, you can contact me either at warriorc@warrior-concepts-online.com. You can do it through the online ninjutsu training Facebook page. You can do it through YouTube under the video or whatever. I try to check in these things as much as possible, but I literally have you have no idea how much email I get. Anyway, so I try, or one of my guys tries. Maybe my guy James Alexander. If he can't answer it, he'll get it too, right? So anyway, that's what I got. I will talk to everybody again next Wednesday. Train hard. Have a good rest of your week or wherever you happen to be in the week. And I'll see you next time. All right? Take care.